to the IR Society for having us here. We're really excited about the collaboration and looking forward to celebrating some fantastic wins this year, and of course announcing the South African winners of the 2024 run that we have published in September. So we're very, very excited about the collaboration. I will also share my screen, and I will warn you already. I have a couple of questions that I would like to address the audience with, and I would really welcome your feedback on those. And you can use the chat function that you can see at the bottom here to give us some of your responses and thoughts. I hope you can see my screen. Should be coming up any second now. If not, just Zoran, maybe give me a shout. So I hope you can see the presentation. Should be cover page. Just give me a thumbs up if you can. So for those that are not aware of Extel, I will give you a brief introduction of who we are, importantly focusing today on our independent performance evaluation and research that we're conducting every single year in 7 different markets. And before we go into the details, I just wanted to very quickly ask you a couple of questions that should really frame this presentation, but also why it is so important to look at this data, to look at the research, and really, collaborate with the Investor Relations Society to actually increase the level of IR engagement to continually improve your market outreach and your investor relations function. So my first question to you, roughly how many equity holdings or equity companies does actually a PM cover? Roughly how many companies are covered typically by a PM? If you can give me, some ideas on what you think, because it is really important when you think about your engagement to also understand how the buy side and also the sell side operate. So I'm going to just reveal it's roughly around 80 to 120 stocks that they're covering. So it's actually quite a large number of companies they research, a large number of companies they're actually regularly in engagement with. And that also is really important for you to be aware of, because that puts you in direct competition with those companies. And obviously, as you're dealing with many PMs, there will be, companies in the thousands that you're actually competing with. And I think IR is a basically competition for capital, and what you do really matters. And that takes me to my second question to you. Since our research is independent and the results are exclusively determined by the feedback that we're receiving from the buy side and sell side, what is the percentage of companies that are featuring in the #1 spot, do you think, have actually experienced negative returns before and during our polling process? And I'm going to give you a few seconds here as well to respond to that. Hopefully we'll get some responses in. But this is also important. How do you measure investor relations? What is actually a qualitative way of understanding how effective your investor relations engagement is? And this is something that we basically hone in on with our research. We focus on the qualitative aspects of your engagement, not only your meetings, your earnings calls, your investor events, but also the quality of engagement of your C-suite, how credible they are. And we will go through all of these detailed aspects in a second. So to give you a sense and to answer the questions, 55% of our #1 winners in our emerging EMEA research have actually had negative returns before and during our survey polling. So you would assume that people who are voting for their respective corporate counterparts would actually favor companies that actually bring them good returns. Our results actually show the opposite. 55% actually had negative returns. And that really goes to show how important investor relations is in terms of proactively communicating your equity story, irrespective of the financial performance of the company. And that really matters. And that matters as a measure of investor relations, to kind of separate IR from the share price performance, but really focus on the quality of investor relations, which clearly, resonates with the investor community in terms of, getting more transparent information on the company. Especially when you're not doing so well, they need to know why and how you're overcoming those challenges. So this is just a little bit of background and to help you frame really the importance of this research. Now, in terms of how IR is measured, I wanted to share with you just an overview of actually how IR is measured also in Europe. So we're seeing here, based on our ranking research, quite a large proportion actually within European companies that want and aim to achieve a top number 3 ranking in our research results, and that has really become a very important KPI for investor relations to measure themselves, because it is an independent feedback. It obviously values, it is of greater value for investor relations, but also for the management. And measuring investor relations is starting to become much more a top-down approach in terms of C-suite and boards also getting involved in better understanding investor relations, as it's also becoming much more of a strategic function and the value that this function is delivering. So this should really, give you an idea of how important those research rankings are as a measure of investor relations and creating an industry standard. So for those who are not familiar with an Extel, previously Institutional Investor Research, we've been around for over 50 years, and we've very much positioned ourselves as a unique, not really a service provider, but a key element to how the buy side, sell side, and corporates really evaluate themselves, measure their performances, track their performance year on year, and ensure that they remain competitive and ensure that they're also engaging with their counterparts in an effective and transparent way. And so over 50 years, we started it off asking the buy side to assess the sell side, to understand what the value of the sell side research really delivers for the buy side investment decision-making process. And those results very quickly became an industry standard, measuring sell side and their research, their conferences, their corporate access now, across the board, across the globe, to understand the value that they're driving. And over 20 years ago, now close to 30 years, we've gone into the investor relations space, where we ask global buy and sell side to basically assess corporates on a number of metrics, again, based on the same principle, to understand what is the value that IR is really delivering to the stakeholders, to the investment community, to position the company and present it as a viable investment destination. And as I mentioned, these are results that really determine, careers that are very important for bonuses and remuneration negotiations, and they're effectively used to that effect in the companies. Now, we're very unique in the sense that we are right in the middle, really, of the capital markets players. We provide, through our research platforms, a 3-way feedback loop. That means we ask the buy side and sell side to assess corporates completely independently. And we also ask you corporates to assess, in turn, to assess the buy side and sell side also across various metrics. This is an important research output that the sell side are using to understand how they're servicing you. And also on the buy side, not only the PMs, but also increasingly the corporate access teams on the buy side are looking at the data and the evaluation by corporates to basically assess their own performance. So it's very, very important, to be part of this process, to continually elevate the performance of your stakeholders and your own. Now, I mean, our ultimate goals really for the research that we're providing to the corporate universe is, one, to give you obviously perception data that is predicated on feedback that is generated completely independently. So we're not influencing how buy side and sell side are assessing companies, who they're assessing. And I will share with you the methodology on this process in a second, which gives you an idea of actually the value of the data and its independence. So it's really important to give you insights of the market, so you actually have the right tools to kind of respond, but also, more importantly, to be very proactive in your engagement by understanding what the sentiment is and what the whispers on the streets are. The other element is of our research is not only providing you with a platform to track your and monitor your performance, but more importantly, to benchmark your performance. So not only are you able to see how well and effectively you resonate with certain stakeholders across very specific activities, but you have the ability to also benchmark that and look at your performance relative to your sector peers, relative to your regional peers. So in essence, depending on who your peer group is and your universe, you have the ability to kind of, use that benchmarking data to compare and make sure that you're continually improving those aspects of your outreach. The third element is also very important strategically. Because we're obviously evaluating the sell side on various aspects, including conferences, corporate access, sell side research, it is also very important for you, especially for the mid-cap companies who may be lacking sell side coverage, to also understand who are the sell side analysts that are really valued by the buy side and that the buy side are reading their research of, which allows you also to create a much more proactive sell side acquisition program or engagement to really target sell side analysts and companies that are really delivering the value to their buy side counterparts. Likewise for corporate access teams, understanding who are the corporate access teams that can give you access to US investors, to Asian investors, if you're targeting those. It gives you the ability to really focus on the most important players in the market that allow you then to improve and accelerate your investor relations program yourself. Now, in terms of methodology, this is really important to understand really the data and how it actually comes about. There are obviously quite a lot here on the screen, and the presentation will be shared with you after the event. But the most important aspect of our research process is that we are scoping a very large global buy-side and sell-side universe. All of the individuals, excuse me, are pre-vetted. That means they have to fulfill very specific eligibility criteria to participate in our research and to be able to contribute feedback on you. So for the buy side, they have to be invested in the region. So they have to have a mandate to invest in emerging markets to be able to participate in evaluating South African companies. On the sell side, they have to have covered your stock over the last 12 to 18 months. So this really, guarantees and ensures that the data and the feedback that we're receiving is actually of relevance to you and can help you grow and improve what you're doing. And also reflects, obviously, authentic feedback. It is important for us to reach a large universe, so the data is also statistically meaningful and actionable for you. The other element that is very important in terms of our methodology is that there is no weighting. So every voter that participates to provide feedback on you has an equal vote. So whether you are large, have a large AUM as an asset manager or small, we don't actually make any assumptions around who is more important to you. You can actually see it in the results, which kind of demographics you are, having basically strong performance with, or which kind of demographics you are basically underperforming compared to your peers. So we basically break it down by different regions, geographies, and demographics, so you have the ability to really fully understand, where you're over and underperforming across the different stakeholder groups you're engaging. The other element is it's basically a rating-based evaluation. They rate each area that I will show you in a second from 1 to 5. 1 is average and 5 is excellent. And basically the sum of those points really ultimately determine your market score, so your market share in terms of the points that have been allocated to you versus your peers, and also determine your ultimate ranking. For the IRO function, it is also important to know if you have a team that is bigger than 5, it'll be tricky because they can only vote for a maximum of 5 IROs, and they have to be very deliberate in how they're allocating those 5 points, because they can only assign each rating once. So they can only give 5 points to one individual on the IR team, 4 points to one individual, and so on and so forth. But they can obviously nominate as many companies as they want. So there's no limit in terms of the number of companies they can assess through this process. So these are basically, the high level pieces of our methodology. And I guess it's also important to say that every listed entity in emerging markets that South Africa falls under, is basically eligible to be nominated. So we're not giving the buy side and sell side, who are the voters, a pre-selected list of companies to choose from. So there's no index. They have to basically physically enter the name of the company they wish to assess. And that also is really important to remain, independent, and to create this independent view of your stakeholders. I just wanted to very quickly show you the different metrics that you are now being assessed in. So you can see here at the top, we have, I guess, the individual category, so IR and executive management team. The results for the CEO are basically based on the evaluation from 1 to 5 on his or her leadership, communication, and credibility. For the CFO, we asked them to assess financial stewardship, capital allocation, and communication, again, all from 1 to 5. The board of directors is seen as a more collective group, so we're not asking for individual names here, but we're wanting to understand in terms of the governance structures, what are the views of the investor community. And this is something that we have actually introduced in our research over the last 2 or 3 years. So it's a very recent entry, if you like, based on the increased interest of the investor community in actually engaging with board of directors more directly. Where there's also a real need for governance roadshows and much larger and more greater interaction with that part of the corporate functions. Then we asked them to assess the IR professionals. So this is a generic assessment from 1 to 5. So there are no specific metrics related to the IR professionals, because really, in essence, everything that you do sits here within the IR program. So you can see the IR program, we break down into financial disclosure and services and communication. Again, they assess for the financial disclosure, the quality and relevance, granularity and consistency. For the services and communication part, they assess your business and market knowledge as IROs, because again, if you think of your investor stakeholders, which is always important to have in the back of your mind, most of them are sector agnostic. So the information that you impart on them is absolutely critical for their understanding of the company, their understanding of your peer universe, and how you fit within the macroeconomic market backdrop. Then they evaluate the productivity of your meetings, your earnings calls, your credibility and authority. And this is a really important metric, because it also shows, in essence, how much you are empowered by your executive management team to really represent the company, how much internal, stakeholder relationships you have that can kind of give you the backbone through the information and the sources that you can access internally as well to represent the company in the most appropriate way. And then finally, responsiveness. So it's not about how quick, but also, of course, naturally, the value of the content that you're delivering as part of your response that matters. ESG is, of course, a big area. We're not expecting through our research to reflect the complexities here, since it's also kind of depreciating in interest in some markets. But we want to understand what the investors think in terms of the KPIs that you have selected to measure your business, your sustainability engagement. So above and beyond whatever is required of you as a business, do you do any kind of sustainability events, workshops, site visits that allow the investor community to basically understand your trajectory in terms of meeting those sustainability goals that you've set yourself? And then finally, to what extent you've integrated your ESG metrics into your overall business model and corporate strategy. And finally, we have the investor event. So this is not for every company and a metric or component of the investor relations program. It should be. It's something that has become of great value to the investor community. It doesn't necessarily have to be a full day. It can be a couple of hours, an hour hybrid event or an online event. But providing you again the tools to create much more transparency around your business, focusing on the important area of your business that may be innovative or that may create more growth for the business, is create more insights and understanding of where your business is going. So these are the metrics that are being assessed. I wanted to share with you now how they're actually assessing them. So what the voting process basically looks like. So you can also, when you engage your buy side and sell side contacts to participate and promote the survey participation, you also know how this works. So in essence, every voter that is pre-verified will have a profile on our platform. They can see, the different surveys that they're actually eligible to participate in and vote in. So they click on the appropriate survey to participate in, and then they basically proceed to go into the CEO, CFO, and investor relations category. And this is the perspective from the buy side that I'm showing you. They have to enter the name of the company that they wish to assess. Again, it's very important providing and then they proceed to rate each area to also elaborate on their rating. So for instance, if they've rated you lower on some of the metrics, they have the ability to actually provide some commentary around why and what they want to actually see improve. You can also see here, the areas for the company board and the CEO and CFO. I'm not sure if you can see this. Okay, so the CEO and CFO are basically the two areas where we're actually pre-populating the information already. So we're providing some assistance, if you like, because there's no real competition on the CEO, CFO category, so they don't have to enter them. For the IRO, as I mentioned earlier, they actually physically have to enter the names. So Tato, Matt, everybody else who has actually this year been evaluated in South Africa, the names had to be physically inputted in our system for them to be rated. So this is also a reflection of how visible these individuals are and how effective their engagement is, that people remember them, and type in their names. Of course, if there are any misspellings, we have our own index that we're keeping, and we also seek your assistance to create this index in this roster, so we have the right kind of information to cross reference the names that are being inputted in the system. And this is sort of the next part that I wanted to focus on in my presentation. As a lot of you will know, the survey started already yesterday, so buy side and sell side are already voting on corporates. What we always ask for corporates to do is the next step here, which basically involves 3 steps for you to remember. And please reach out to me if you haven't received the communication. I'll make sure that you're set up correctly and that you have the relevant tools and accesses to do that. So for you as corporates, you can also participate in this research process. Number one, by basically providing us with the names of the IROs, CEOs, and CFOs. So you basically cross-check in our system, whether what we have is correct or updated if, you have new joiners on the team. So this process is ongoing. We ideally wanted it done by the 13th of January, but it is actually ongoing until we actually finalize our research cycle on the 21st of February. So if you haven't done this, please do this now. We also allow you through this process, number 2 here, to actually share with us insights about your investor relations practices. So we ask you about your budget. We ask you about the number of meetings that you've had, the number of conferences you've attended. What are you doing on AI? How are you measuring ESG? So we ask you a number of questions around the investor relations activities that you're running, because this data we aggregate from all the companies that are participating, and we actually share it back to you as a summary report. So you actually, have some benchmarks as well, some KPIs that you can also, align with by reviewing that. So please do that as well. And through the same process, and this is really important, as I mentioned at the beginning, we provide a 3-way feedback loop. So we also ask you to vote for the buy side and sell side. So you have the ability to assess the buy side across 5 different metrics. So we ask you, about the quality of feedback they give you, how well they're actually supporting the ongoing strategy of the business. So there are different aspects that you can actually assess them in. For the sell side, we ask you to assess the quality of research, the sell side analysts, so your top sell side analysts. We ask you to assess the conferences that you've attended and the corporate access teams based on various metrics. And again, this is information that is really vital for them to understand how they're actually servicing you and how they can actually improve engagement with yourself as well. This process is also ongoing, so please complete this by the 21st of February. The deadline here is the 13th of January, because we kind of always want to encourage to have this all done before the actual survey with the buy side and sell side starts. The final bit I skip, you also have the opportunity to give us your lists, your buy side and sell side contacts, because we then verify them, make sure that they actually meet the eligibility criteria, and we would then include them in our outreach if they do. But we missed now that window because the survey has started already yesterday, and we need time to basically go through the pre-verification process. But please remember this for next year. Now, the timeline for this year's survey looks as so. So you have the opportunity to do all of your own rosters until the 21st of February. The buy-side and sell-side survey opened yesterday, and it will continue. Sorry, opened on Monday the 20th. Opened on Monday, and it will go on the 21st of February. So you have the opportunity to, let your buy and sell side contacts know to participate. So they provide feedback on your company, and you can then obviously see those results both in our obviously emerging EMEA sector results, but also specifically now with our collaboration with the IRSSA for the South companies that have won and have been evaluated on our website once you register for free. Just a little bit of testimonials from some of the companies that we're engaging with, but this is also our team, and I also promised to share some insights specifically on MTM because they've obviously come out as a very strong winner this year. It's a very strong team performance of MTM on an emerging EMEA level, and I'm just going to come out of this and share with you now the research that sits behind it. And this is basically a client access. So not everybody would be able to see the kind of granularity or the detail once you log into our website, but this is something that we share with our clients once they subscribe to the research. So ultimately, what you can see here is MTN's performance year on year. So these are their rankings, and this is specifically now for the TMT sector results for the large caps in all of emerging EMEA. You can see here the rankings that MTN has actually achieved and the year-on-year progression, which is really, really important, to kind of be able to track that. I mentioned earlier, it is important that our research is statistically relevant. So you can see here already the number of individuals that are actually contributed to the sector feedback to obtain those kind of results. So it's not 5, 10, 20 people. It's actually a large number of stakeholders that are engaging with MTN and other companies in the TMT sector in the region that delivers this result. You also have the ability very quickly to understand, where the strengths and weaknesses are. So you can see here, MTN has very, very high ratings within the US stakeholder universe on the buy side and sell side. We can, break that down further into I can't get into the filter, but here you go. So you can actually break that, feedback down into buy side and sell side. So you basically understand what the buy side thinks versus what the sell side thinks. So you have the ability to navigate it. I don't want to, go into too much detail, but it just is, gives you a sense of, how the company's performance is year on year, and then more importantly, how the company's performance is compared to their sector peers. So, for instance, in the large cap category for the TMT sector, there were 15 companies in total assessed. So you can see it's quite a competitive space, and you can see here the position that MTN has, and with a year-on-year comparison as well. So the rating is really important because that shows you the average rating that they have basically rated MTN in. So you can see it's 4.69. And more importantly, and this is, why this research is so critical, it's not only, getting a qualitative aspect of what you're doing, but it's also showing you the impact that you have. So this market share, this percentage score, is basically an indication of the reach that you have, the impact that you've had on the stakeholder groups. And it's based on the share of points that you have received, divided by the number of points allocated to the other companies that have been nominated. So both matter, the quality of your deliverable and the reach that you basically have in terms of your investor engagement. Because, for instance, you can see here that Saudi Telecom, for instance, has a slightly higher rating, and you may find, companies that have a much higher rating. Maybe they score a top 5. but they don't have the reach, they don't have the engagement scope. And this is something immediately as a takeaway you can then build on based on where your reach is weakest, based on the geographic outreach, or based on, for instance, if we were to look at this based on AUMs, for instance, which kind of helps you with your targeting as well. So we change the profile. We look, for instance, at, the visibility of companies within this kind of AUM bracket, 100 to 500 million, and you can immediately see that the results are changing and shifting. And this still remains an area where MTM has a really strong position with that specific stakeholder group. So you have the ability to kind of, narrow down and filter and do your own benchmarking through this as well. But this is really important to be able to kind of track that. And I will pause here because there's tons here. I think the important thing is to see, the improvement that MTM has actually had over the course of the last year, specifically to kind of see, how they have gone to improve across, each and every single area. But it's important to kind of continue to track that and see, where the pain points are at the same time, and where market outreach, for instance, when we look at the US or the UK, for instance, where that can also grow to match up with some of the peers, maybe in other markets too. So I'm going to pause here. And thank you for your time. And I really look forward to your questions, and look for the South African awards later.
Thanks, Amani. I think your line has been a little unstable. I think the bulk of that we got, and thank you so much.